Hello everyone, this is part 3 of What If Naruto Had to Prove Himself, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Shikamaru lounged comfortably on his stool, leaning lazily against the Ichiraku ramen stand's counter as he watched the clouds go by. It was a nice day for it. There were plenty of clouds in the sky, but it wasn't quite overcast and there wasn't a storm head in sight. He didn't react at all beyond smirking when a large white mass appeared on the next stool over and a mop of blonde hair plopped down on the counter beside him. Need ramen, it said weakly. The owner chuckled and got to work preparing some. Good morning, Naruto, the lazy ninja said casually, for it technically still was, for another hour or so at least. Did you give the riddle any more thought? Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the weary blonde head drag itself up off the tabletop and face him, yawning spectacularly. Blue Crescent squinted at him in confusion. Shikamaru wouldn't have been surprised if Naruto had only just noticed him. He could practically hear the gears in his friend's head grinding into motion. He waited a handful of beats in silence, staring at a particularly fluffy nimbus. Abruptly the would-be Hokage's eyebrows shot up and he jerked himself erect. Oh, that's right, the riddle, he exclaimed. I'm going to take that as a no, Shikamaru thought dryly. What a drag. Do you even remember what it was? He asked with a sigh. Naruto crossed his arms and looked indignant. Of course I do. At least give me credit for that much. Just give me a minute. With that he turned back toward the counter and hunched over his folded arms, staring at the counter with a thoughtful frown. Shikamaru, never having so much as turned his head, returned his full attention to his sky and didn't press the other boy. As the silence dragged on, Naruto's ramen finished cooking, and he began to pick through it as he deliberated. If you leave me behind, your choice will, he mumbled around a small mouthful. Suddenly he perked up and quickly slurped the noodles trailing out of his mouth. Hey, he barked after a hurried swallow. Shikamaru finally lolled his head expectantly in Naruto's direction. The blonde ninja's eyes shone hopefully. Is the answer determination? Shikamaru smirked again. Afraid not, he said easily, prompting Naruto to wilt slightly in disappointment. Think about it, he continued. It doesn't matter how determined you are to beat some guy if he's too far out of your league, right? He turned back to the clouds. The biggest ones were drifting away, it seemed. Sad. One hand picking at his ramen, Naruto considered the lazy ninja's words. Eventually, he nodded. Okay, he started slowly, then is it? Sorry, Naruto, Shikamaru interrupted, pulling himself languidly to his feet. One try per day. He glanced over his shoulder and raised an eyebrow, one corner of his mouth tugging upward. Besides, it looks like you've got something else to do right now anyway. See you tomorrow. Shoving his hands in his pockets, the idle ninja strolled off into the crowd. Baffled, Naruto turned back to his ramen. And jumped. Trying to roost on his hand was a small bird of a very strange variety, entirely black and white, with a frozen, lifeless face and feathers that did not stir with its wings. It fluttered upwards a little with his sudden motion, but almost immediately settled back down. Upon doing so, it literally flattened itself against the plate on the nape of his glove. With a small puff of smoke, it was replaced with the words, outside main gates. Noon. Sigh. Naruto frowned down at the short message. I still don't get how he does that, he thought irritably. Nevertheless, he stood and asked for the rest of his order to be put in takeout cups. Noon wasn't that long off. As he headed toward the gates with his lunch under one arm, he glanced at his hand again and grimaced. He better hope this washes off. Naruto disposed of the last of the ramen cups and the bag he'd carried them in before striding out of the village. He didn't have to go far before he found a squirrel of the same artificial nature waiting for him. It turned and fled immediately, though slowly enough for him to follow. It led him on a side path off the main road a short ways. He caught a glimpse of a small glade with tall, healthy grasses. When something black swung up out of nowhere and caught him solidly across the face. He slammed heavily on his back against the ground. Biting back curses at the sudden pain, Naruto reflexively tried to flip back upright. It was then that he noticed a couple of things. First, his legs were pinned. Second, there was a blade to his tea. But that wasn't nearly as surprising as the identity of his attacker. Sigh. He sputtered, shocked. Wah, what are you doing? You fail, the other boy said flatly as he got up and sheathed his short sword. He stared down emotionlessly at his prone teammate. Naruto gave a couple short coughs as he sat up with a frown. Huh, what are you talking about? He asked, confused. You fail, Sai repeated as blunt as ever. My test to become Hokage. You fail it. Naruto gaped. Apparently lazy but was wrong about that no more fights thing. Then he snapped to his senses. That's not fair. You ambushed me. At last an expression crept onto Sai's face, a contemptuous sneer. Death will not wait for you to be ready, he said with disdain. If you are not ready at every moment of every day to face any sort of attack, you will not last 1 week as Hokage. His tone turned matter of fact. And if you don't already know that, you are not only no Hokage but worthless as a ninja as well. He turned and began to walk away. Naruto's temper flared, but he tamped it back down, tallying the harsh words up to Sai's usual abrasiveness. He and Sakura and the others had put a lot of work into improving Sai's attitude, and it had seemed like the enigmatic young man had come a long way. Now, though, it was almost as if he were back to square one. Naruto sprang to his feet. Hey, you have to give me another chance. He yelled, fighting irritation. Sai didn't even turn. Life doesn't offer second chances, he called dismissively. Naruto grinned. But nothing stops a ninja from achieving his goal. He ran forward and leapt in a flying kick at the other boy. Sai merely dipped his head slightly and let it pass over him. Immediately upon landing, Naruto spun into a taijutsu assault on his teammate. Not even pretending to put up a guard, Sai nonchalantly swayed and bobbed away from every blow. The look on his face suggested tremendous boredom. Several times his eyes fluttered closed mid-dodge, as if he was struggling to stay awake. This casual indifference began to grate on Naruto's nerves. Combined and compounded with the simple fact that he could not seem to land any hits, and the aggravated ninja grew more and more frustrated, and his fighting began to show it. After a particularly clumsy lunge, Sai planted a foot on Naruto's backside and smoothly shoved him to the ground. Naruto rolled onto a skid on his feet, hand dragging along ground and a snarl on his face from the embarrassing move. Sai remained at ease, and even had the nerve to pull out his scroll and brush and start doodling idly. Come on, Naruto growled through gritted teeth. Fight back. Sai threw him a blank glance. Oh, were we fighting? He said quizzically. I hadn't noticed. There was no trace of mockery in his voice, but that only made it even more insulting. Naruto glared kunai at the other boy. Sai met his glower unblinkingly for a long moment. Then he turned back to his scroll. Naruto grunted as if gut shot. Why you? He threw his hands together. Shadow Clone Jutsu. 4 clones popped into existence, and all 5 Narutos scattered, each moving to approach Sai from a different angle. Just before they attacked, the painting ninja finished one stroke decisively and formed a hand sign around his brush. He was enveloped in a large puff of smoke and suddenly 3 grayscale lions appeared and pounced. 4 Narutos leapt back. 1 clone wasn't fast enough and fell to a beautifully painted claw. The survivors grimaced, less from the clone's demise than from the sight of Sai sitting cross-legged on the ground behind his artificial beasts, munching on a couple rice balls he had produced from somewhere and staring at them impassively. One of the Narutos threw a pellet to the ground that exploded in a brilliant flash. When it faded, 1 lion was gone, 3 shuriken whirling through the space it had occupied, ink de-sping from their edges. Another was just a heartbeat from catching a Rasengan to the nose. The 3rd clone attempted to get in close with a kunai, but his target reared up and gashed him across the face. The Naruto that had thrown the shuriken leapt through the resulting smoke cloud and caught the upright lion around the end and bodily hurled it against a nearby tree. All 3 beasts disposed of, both duplicates turned back to their true opponent. To be confronted by 2 of Sai's ink clones. Still leisurely seated, the real Sai finished the last of his rice balls. Sai felt the throbbing in his muscles slowly drain away, his racing heart gradually returning to normal speed. The special pills concealed in the rice balls were working. He'd known going into it that it would be very difficult to successfully evade Naruto's onslaught, at all yesterday's observation had been enough to confirm that, and he was aware that, as the blonde ninja's anger grew, so too would the cost of a single misstep. Add to that the crucial need to make his defense seem effortless. One hint of fatigue would ruin everything, and it was taking Sai every ounce of control and stamina he possessed to keep up the deception. He'd barely made it to the brief pause in dodging, when he quickly seized the opportunity to use his ink jutsu to let his body recover. His objective was proving to be even more trying than he expected. But he was Anbu. He was Root. He would endure. Before him, the four doppelgangers tangled in the dance of combat, the ink clones as stoic as their creator and the shadow clones having no more luck against them than the original. Speaking of which, Sai was no fool. He was resting, true, but his senses were still as alert as always, more so, given the relative defenselessness of his position. It was because of this acute focus that he heard the telltale signs he'd been listening for. He lazily turned his head. The real Naruto had almost silently snuck around behind him, and was now leaping toward him, Rasengan in hand. Sai's heart rate picked up again, but he merely quirked an eyebrow at the blonde ninja, trying to make it look like he was unimpressed. The gamble worked. Naruto's eyes narrowed, both against the explosion of dust and in disgust at himself. In a flash of anger, he'd swung early. How is he dodging me so easily? He couldn't figure it out, and it was frustrating the heck out of him. 20 feet behind him, Sai spoke. The Rasengan. Every time I see it, its strength is blatantly apparent. His voice was cold and heretical as always. I imagine it would be truly formidable if used by a ninja of any considerable talent. Naruto stiffened. The abuse was not helping his mood. He whirled on the other boy. What is your problem? Why do you keep badmouthing me? What did I do? Sai gave him an evaluating stare. Nothing, and that is exactly the point. This whole time you haven't even been able to touch me, and I've not even been trying. You claim to be a powerful shinobi. I thought you possessed some trace of SK, but now I see it must have been pure luck getting you through all your battles. That and that infernal power that isn't even yours. I cannot determine what the fifth sees in you, and certainly not what the third saw. If someone like you became the sixth, the Leaf Village would be the laughing stock of the shinobi world. As he spoke, Naruto's jaw clenched tighter and tighter, his eyes filling with wrath and his anger boiling to the point of barely controlled fury. Sai carefully watched his teammates' reaction to his words. No good. He was throwing out the worst things he could think of, but Naruto wasn't quite where he wanted him yet. It would take something big to push him over the edge. Suddenly he had an idea. The worst thing about you is that you are a failure, he continued blandly. You failed my test, and so you failed to become Hokage. Thus you have also failed the fifth, who for some reason had confidence in you. Shut up. You failed the third's expectations, as well as your own. Shut up. Sai ignored him and went in for the K. And you failed to keep your promise to Sakura. You failed him. He heard Naruto's breath catch. He struck a pose he remembered from photos of the old Team 7. In as cool a voice as he could muster, he said, "You're such a loser." Something within Naruto snapped. Only one person had ever called him that, and coming from him it had come to be a term of endearment. He would not let that friend's memory be tarnished. The burning rage in his core spread throughout his veins. He let out an inhuman howl and charged at Sai, eyes blazing red. Hinata turned, disappointed, from the ramen stand. He wasn't there, either. With the 12 of them off mission duty courtesy of Tsunade, she'd been hoping to spend some more time with Naruto, but she couldn't seem to find him anywhere. Just then, she spotted Shikamaru lounging on a nearby rooftop. Remembering his departing words the night before, she hurried through the building and up its stairwell. The lazy ninja was reclining on the very edge of the roof, arms folded behind his head, staring straight up with a wistful expression. She walked over, wondering what he could be doing up here. Hey, Hinata. Nice day for watching the clouds, isn't it? She blinked and glanced upward. That answered that question. I suppose so, she said politely. You shush Shikamaru. I was wondering. He smirked. You're looking for Naruto, right? Feeling her cheeks redden, she simply nodded hopefully. Still looking skyward, he chuckled. Well, sorry, but I don't have a clue where he is. She wilted. But wherever he is, he's with Sai. Oh, thank you, Shikamaru. That probably meant Naruto was in the middle of the Painter Ninja's trial. Sigh. There was always something about him that bothered Hinata. He never showed any sign of any emotion at all, and he was always so cold to talk to. There was always this stark air about him. She didn't know what his trial was, exactly, but she knew it involved fighting. Once again Shikamaru seemed to read her thoughts. Don't worry, he said cheerfully, this is Naruto we're talking about. He'll be fine. She smiled gratefully down at him, but the quiet worry in the pit of her stomach would not be stilled for some reason. Sai braced himself in all but the obvious ways. That had done it, that was definitely Fox chakra bubbling up. He heard the cry of fury and faced it down stoically. He silently hoped his confidence in Naruto was well placed. As Naruto ran forward, something bounced up into view, the gemstone of Tsunade lace. His sharpened eyesight caught the reflection of something in its polished surface. It was the village gates. The village. Did everyone there secretly think this of him? His thoughts flashed back to the elders and all the people who had sneered hatefully at him over the years. His teeth clenched tighter, lips drawing further back in a snarl. Another step, another bounce, and something else drew his eye. It was something small and wooden, the Hyuga symbol he'd carved. He blinked as he thought of Hinata. Her own father had told her she was a miserable failure nearly every day for years. In her place most would have been furious, rebellious, but she merely took it silently. She let him say whatever he wanted, and she resolved to prove him wrong by making herself stronger. He remembered her telling him that he, Naruto, had been her inspiration. She had told him just last night, even how much it meant to her to see him laughing in the face of contempt, never letting the word failure get to him. Would he now make her a liar? As if cold water had splashed him in the face, he snapped back to his senses. He found himself standing directly in front of Sai, his own fist trembling 1 inch from the bridge of his teammate's nose. A hauntingly similar scene flashed through his mind and he shuddered. He dropped his hands to his sides, took a deep breath, and shook his head. No. Sai arched an eyebrow at him. Naruto looked him square in the face. I will not let you bait me. You can taunt me, insult me all you like. I will not give you a reason to. I know who I am. I am Naruto Uzumaki, proud ninja of the Leaf Village and soon to be 6th Hokage. Believe it. If you doubt my strength, I will show you my skills, not my anger. At this, he took 2 steps back and fell into his fighting stance, his eyes mirroring the ironclad resolve of his words. Sai stared at him silently, looking entirely unaffected by the speech. Naruto met his gaze unblinkingly. Several long moments passed. Then Sai turned away. There is no reason to continue. Now that your mind is in the right place, I would not stand a chance. You pass the test of temperance. Naruto's eyes shot up in confusion and surprise. Wah. Wait, then, all that stuff you said. Deception is a necessary skill for ninjas. You already know I am talented in it. Congratulations, he said simply as he walked away. He got a good 10 paces away before he heard Naruto finally snap out of his stunned silence with a shout of victory. Sai had learned about the 9-tailed fox before he'd even heard the host's name. He was fully aware of all the things the fox's chakra could do upon his insertion in Team 7. Yet he continually found himself surprised, not by the fox but by the ninja. Early reports on Naruto's character had indicated him to be naive and thick-headed, and this was partially true. The loudmouthed knucklehead could frequently act highly illogically, abandoning stealth at all the wrong times, constantly being sidetracked from the mission at hand, and rushing to attack far superior forces. Yet he only ever did so to protect the life or ideals of comrades or dependents. And somehow, he always came through. Only once had he ever failed a crucial assignment, and more often than not he beat said enemies. Sai had witnessed Naruto accomplish things that should have been far and away out of his skill level countless times, and it was not the fox's power that made the difference. Naruto almost never drew on it unless there was no other recourse, and there were situations where not even fox chakra could help. His startling strength, then, came from his bonds with others. Seeing this, Sai had decided to experiment with them himself in trial form, at least. What he found was not increased power, but something else entirely. He wasn't sure what it was, but it filled him with some sort of peace that he was strangely unwilling to relinquish. And something else came with, something he hadn't felt in many long years. Emotion. It was wrong, he knew it was. Emotion was the ninja's bane, that troublesome thing that clouded his judgment and kept him from focusing on his mission. But now that he felt it, it had become addicting. It filled a void he had not even realized existed, and he wondered how he had endured its absence for so long. The truth was, he was grateful to Naruto for rekindling it. For all of its benefits, though, Sai never lost sight of the dangers of emotion, particularly anger. Anger made a ninja wild, unpredictable. It dulled his wits and reflexes, made him prone to mistakes. And Naruto was often predisposed toward anger. It had been a risky enterprise to enrage him enough to show him the lesson Sai wanted to teach. He almost expected to sustain heavy injury by the end of it, but if it meant helping his friend become the best. Sai paused mid-step. Friend, when had that happened? He thought back over all his memories of his new team. He'd heard from someone that it was impossible to get to know Naruto without getting to like him. A small, genuine smile tugged its way onto his face. He was beginning to suspect they were right. Kiba stood just inside the gates waiting for him when he re-entered the village. The knucklehead just tore through here, practically bouncing from foot to foot. I take it he passed? The wild ninja asked slyly. Sai nodded once. Then I guess Akamaru and I'll take him next, he continued, grinning and petting the head of the massive dog behind him. Good luck, Sai said simply. Hinata stole another glance over at him. Naruto had shown up out of nowhere a short while ago, crowing that he'd passed his second trial, prompting Hinata to let out the breath she'd been holding since hearing about it. Then Naruto had asked her if she felt like getting dinner again. He didn't have to ask twice. They weren't going to Ichiraku this time because Naruto had insisted on treating her to a curry place she told him she liked and he wouldn't tell her why. Now, as they strolled through the bustle of the streets towards the restaurant, he told her all about Sai's challenge. She listened attentively, but her eye was continually drawn down toward his N. Was that really? You know, Hinata, whatever you're looking at, you can just ask me about it. She jerked in surprise, found him flashing her a sly smirk. Caught red-handed, she began to turn the same color. Oh, you sorry, she sputtered nervously. She took a deep breath and pointed meekly. I saw that why yesterday B but forgot to ask, and, well, I'm J just curious, her voice trailed off. His looked down and saw that she was gesturing at his carving of her clan symbol. Now it was Naruto's turn to blush in embarrassment. Oh, this? He asked sheepishly, scratching at the back of his N. At her timid little nod, he gave a weak chuckle and reached to unclasp the N lace. It's just a little something I made, he said nervously as he handed it to her. I had to make it out of whatever I could find, so it's not really that good a job. It's beautiful, she said in awe, running a finger over the colored bits of sand embedded in the piece, sparking his famous grin. Eventually she proffered it back to him. As he refastened it, she bit her lip, wondering hopefully, then finally asked, why did you make it? He froze. His hand returned to the back of his N, and his eyes kept darting back and forth between her own and the ground. Finally he looked squarely at her and, face tight with embarrassment, said, to remind me of a person precious to me. Before she could react, he stepped forward and gave her a quick peck on the cheek. When he pulled back, their faces were equal shades of deep red. He blinked once before spinning on his heel. Okay, we better get going, we don't want 'em to close before we get there, right? Ha ha, he said in a rush as he marched off stiffly, the color in his cheeks not fading in the slightest. Hinata raised a hand to her cheek breathlessly. Then a warm smile lit up her face and she followed him. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.